She was standing in the doorway, holding a knife, her shadow stretching across the room as the moonlight caught her face. She was smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile you see before something terrible happens. I was 11 when I first realized my stepmother hated me. Before that, I thought maybe she was just strict or didn't like kids much. But that night, when I saw her standing there, I knew it was more than that. My name is Bayo. My father married ADISA after my mother passed away. She came into our home with her own daughter, Tenny, who was the same age as me. At first, everything seemed fine. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, and told my father how lucky he was to have her. But when my father wasn't around, she changed. She would glare at me for no reason, snap at me if I asked for food, and sometimes lock me outside when it got dark, saying I'd been too loud or lazy that day. She never treated Tenny that way. I tried telling my father, but he didn't believe me. ADISA was clever. She always acted sweet when he was home, always calling me dear Bayo and patting my head like I was a good little boy. One night, my father had to leave for a few days. He was a trader, and he often traveled to nearby towns to sell goods. As soon as he was gone, ADISA's smile disappeared. "You're not eating tonight," she said, dumping my food into the fire. Tenny looked uncomfortable, but didn't say anything. She never stood up to her mother. That night, I went to bed hungry, my stomach growling. But hunger was the least of my problems. It started with the whispers. I woke up to the sound of ADISA talking to someone in the next room. The walls in our house were thin, so I could hear bits and pieces of the conversation. "He'll be gone by morning," she said, her voice low but sharp. At first, I thought she was talking about my father. But then she said my name. "Bayo doesn't belong here. He's not one of us. He's weak, just like his mother." My heart started racing. Who was she talking to? I crept out of bed and peeked through a crack in the door. ADISA was sitting on the floor with a small wooden bowl in front of her. Inside the bowl was something dark and wet, like blood. She was drawing patterns on the ground with her fingers, muttering words I didn't understand. Behind her, the shadows on the wall didn't look like her shadow. They moved differently, twisting and shifting like they were alive. The next morning, ADISA acted like nothing had happened. She made breakfast for Tenny and herself, leaving nothing for me. "You can eat when you fetch water," she said, handing me a bucket. The well was far from the house, near the edge of the forest. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The trees seemed darker than usual, and the air felt heavy. When I got to the well, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Scratched into the side of the well were the same patterns ADISA had been drawing in her bowl. I grabbed the bucket and ran back to the house, not caring if I spilled the water. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows from the night before. Around midnight, I heard footsteps outside my room. The door creaked open, and ADISA stepped inside. She was holding a knife. "Why are you awake, little boy?" she asked, her voice soft and sweet. I didn't answer. I couldn't move. She stepped closer, the knife catching the light. "Do you know why your mother died, Bayo?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "She was weak," ADISA said. "Weak women don't survive, and weak boys don't either." What happened next is still a blur. I remember her lunging at me, the knife glinting in the moonlight. I rolled off the bed and ran, screaming, into the night. Tenny must have woken up, because she came running after me, shouting for her mother to stop. I don't know if she was trying to save me or just confused, but her voice made ADISA pause. I kept running until I reached the village elder's house. I banged on the door until he opened it, and I collapsed at his feet, sobbing and telling him everything. The next morning, the elders gathered at our house. They found the knife under ADISA's bed, along with the bowl and the strange patterns. ADISA denied everything, but the elders didn't believe her. They said she had been practicing dark magic, that she had called on spirits to harm me. She was banished from the village, and I never saw her again. Even now, years later, I still have nightmares about the night, about the shadows and the patterns and the way she smiled when she held the knife. Some people say she's still out there, wandering from village to village, looking for her next victim. But I don't think she's looking for anyone else. I think she's still looking for me.